So, folks, what do chili dogs and tyranny have in common? Crazy question, right? I promise, I'm gonna make it make sense. We're gonna talk about it next here on Prepper Nation. Good morning, Nation. John here. Thank you very much for watching, for listening, for hitting subscribe here on the channel. And also, Andy Ellis. Thank you very much, brother, for the coffee. Happy Friday to you, by the way, this Monday morning. I'm a little bit late, sir. Sorry about that. So let's get right into it, folks. Have you ever just been at a sporting event or, a wrestling match or something like that, and you said, "Son," or maybe you told your significant other, "I really want a chili dog. I don't know, the urge just hit me. Let's go get a chili dog or 2." And then you talk about your back hurting and your wife ends up going and getting it for you so you don't have to miss what's going on. Anyway, what does that have to do with tyranny? So we are talking about Governor Grisham of New Mexico this morning. This story broke a couple of days ago, but I think it was Friday afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm like, well, I've already done 2 live streams. I'll talk about it on Monday morning. So much like I would decide at a sporting event, I just got to hankering for a chili dog all of a sudden. This lady, she wakes up one morning and she says, you know what? I'm taking the guns away. I'm taking the guns away. I think it was in Albuquerque specifically, but, again, she's the governor of New Mexico. She says, this is the direct quote, "We are we are suspending open and concealed carry. I think it's time to talk about yada, yada, yada. Time to talk about the Second Amendment. I think it's time. Like John thinks it's time, talking in the third person on a Monday. Never a good thing, by the way. Like John thinks it's time to have a chili dog. I think it's time that we just suspend everybody's constitutional rights and have a conversation about the Second Amendment." And she goes on to say again, this is a direct quote, "No constitutional right, in my view, is absolute." I said, I seen this quote and I said, what? What is this lady talking about? She just wakes up and decides, I'm suspend as the governor of New Mexico, of all places. No disrespect if you're in New Mexico, but I've been through there. There wasn't a whole lot there from what I saw. Of all places, she's like, you know what? I'm going to suspend a guaranteed right, a constitutionally guaranteed right, a constitution that was built on the back end of the Revolutionary War. This lady just gets the hankering to suspend it all of a sudden. And she goes on to say, I expect that there will be a legal battle, an uphill legal battle. Well, no kidding. No kidding. What did you think was going to happen? You don't have the right to suspend a constitutionally guaranteed right. As the governor of New Mexico, you can't do it. You know what I'm saying? And she knows she can't do it. She's admitting it here in the wide open. States cannot suspend a federally constitutionally guaranteed right. In other words, if the Constitution says you have freedom of speech, and I'm just pulling a state here out of the air, the governor of California and his slick back 1980s hair gel, he can't say, you know what, in California, you don't have freedom of speech. No, son, that's not how it works. The Constitution applies to all 50 states. We had a war about this, as a matter of fact, the Civil War. And that was one of many things that was fought over. But beyond that, not only can a state not circumvent the Constitution, but a governor cannot circumvent their own state constitution. It's legal to carry, especially if you have a concealed carry permit in New Mexico. It is constitutionally guaranteed by the federal government. Again, fought wars over this, and it's constitutionally guaranteed at a state level. People that are concealed carrying are doing absolutely nothing wrong. And again, because this lady wakes up and she decides she's going to get rid of guns forever in her state, I have decided that it's time to get rid of all of this until we have a discussion. No, you old hag, you need to go sit in the corner. This ain't how it works. Do y'all remember? I don't even know what commercial it was, but the old lady on the TV, and she's like, this is not how it works. This is not how this works. It's not how it works. So she was pressed, you know, why do you think as a governor, they were being nice about it, throwing softball questions, they don't want to offend this. She's a tyrant, chili dog eating tyrant this morning, son, but they don't want to offend her. So the reporters are throwing her softballs. They're like, well, how do you justify stealing somebody's rights? But they didn't say that. How do you justify temporarily suspending constitutionally guaranteed right? She says that it is a public health emergency epidemic. She said gun violence, which in itself is inherently not even the truth. Inanimate object. They don't commit violence on their own. You get what I'm saying? But that's another conversation for another day. She says public health emergency, epidemic, the same way that she specifically pointed to the pandemic. She said during the pandemic, we suspended rights because we had to, because it was a public health emergency epidemic. We had to do what we had to do. This is a huge issue because, again, we were talking, I think it was this past Friday, about the dry run. What were they allowed to get away with without being held accountable for during the pandemic? Now they have the blueprint. Now they can say, and I think she mentioned also climate change. Climate sickness, maybe, is the way it was worded. People have climate sickness now, and that could eventually be used as a public health emergency epidemic to lock people down, to take backwoods wood stove, things like this. All right. I'm just messing with you if you're in the chat, brother. But seriously, they're going to use that keyword phrase now, public health emergency epidemic. And they're going to slide anything and everything they can into that corner, including the Second Amendment. They're going to point now, and she's specifically pointing at the Second Amendment, and she's saying this is just like COVID. This is just like a pandemic. And even though the stuff that was done during the pandemic was totally illegal, nobody was held accountable, and rights were suspended for a couple of years until the courts got heavily involved. And we accomplished what we wanted to. She's saying this is the same thing. I'm suspending everybody's right to carry a firearm, and the courts are going to drag it out what I want to do. If you're caught, listen how crazy this is. This is straight up tyranny, folks. If you have the proper legal paperwork to conceal carry in the state of New Mexico, and you're concealed carrying, and they catch you, according to the governor, you can be fined up to $5,000 for following the law, and using your constitutionally guaranteed rights at a federal level and at a state level. This is not how any of this works. Okay, now look, Congress, they ain't the greatest. They're not the greatest representatives in the world. Can I get an amen on that, son? They're not good. They're the swamp for a reason. But in theory, when a law passes or an amendment happens or is taken away, it has to go through Congress. All right? For something to happen in a specific state, it has to go through the representatives of that state. Tyranny is when the person at the top, the king or the queen, or in this case, the chili dog eater, wakes up and says, I am king, I am God, this is what's happening. There's no representation, there's no voice whatsoever. Again, we fought a king in England over this because there was no representation. So normally I would sit up here and I would say, now I can't, I can't promote you breaking the law. I can't ask you to do this. But look, I'm going to tell you what I would do. I'm not in New Mexico, okay? I'm in North Carolina. But the thing is, if I was in New Mexico, if you're open carrying, they're going to nail you and they're going to fine you and you might catch a charge. I would sue at that point because, again, constitutionally guaranteed. But it's going to get hung up in the courts for a while. But if I had a concealed carry permit in New Mexico, I'm concealed carry. There's no way I'm not concealed carrying over the threat of being fined because the chances of you being caught concealed carrying, let's be honest, are slim to none anyway. Unless you just got it in a stupid place and you're throwing your coat open all the time. Look, most people can conceal carry and nobody even knows. Especially if you have the permit to do it and you've jumped through the hoops already. I'm not leaving a firearm at home because Grisham, the chili dog eater, has decided I can't do it anymore. I'm still going to carry it because the world right now is a dangerous, dangerous place. And another thing I want to say before I close this video out, sometimes it has to go through courts, right? Sometimes things need to go through courts to be decided. That's why the courts are there. Not a huge fan of the courts. I think they're compromised and I think they've been weaponized. And I think you could point to President Trump and see that they've been weaponized, at least at a certain level, federal level. But sometimes you can't leave it to the courts. You just can't do it. You know, we cannot allow this to happen because if people in New Mexico allow this to happen and everybody starts leaving their firearms at home because they're scared of being fined, this is going to continue to happen in other states. Other governors, again, pointing at California, pointing at Michigan, pointing at New York, they're going to look at this lady and they're going to say, man, Governor Grisham got away with it. This means we can too. The precedent has been set. She's expecting people to take this to court, and they will, to drag it out for a couple of years, and for her to have a couple of years of a gun-free New Mexico. But I don't think it should go down that way. This should be totally ignored. And to the credit, I think it's the sheriff of Albuquerque, if I'm not mistaken. I would have to go back and look. But the sheriff there said, I'm not going to recognize this. This is unconstitutional. Like, this is so overbearingly tyrannical that liberals who conceal carry are saying this is stupid. We're not dealing with this. The world's it's a dangerous place. So just ignore it. Conceal carry. Take your permit with you. You understand? Uh, take the chance. I would prefer to take the chance, again, very microscopic chance that you're going to be caught concealed carrying and that you're going to get fined, and then that's going to be held up in court. But if something goes down in a public setting and you don't have protection, you're in serious trouble at that point. You're at the mercy of somebody who's crazy. And so for me, I would much rather conceal carry and throw this lady's order into the wind. Um, she said she's suspending it because she thinks it's time to have we need to have a conversation about the Second Amendment. There is no conversation, lady. There's no conversation. The conversation has already been had. There's no wiggle room here with the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment literally means you have the right to protect yourself. And if tyrants come in to take the guns, you take care of the tyrants. This is why we have a Second Amendment. So this lady's treading. She needs to be removed from office. Legally, that would take some doing, but I hope that they just flush this lady down the toilet in New Mexico. But I mean, again, this issue's already been decided. This lady has done lost her mind. You know, maybe she switched her medication. Maybe she's staying up too late. It happens. I do it sometimes, son. Maybe she got a hold of some really strong cappuccino. I don't know what she's thinking, but she's not the king of England. And even if she was, we'd kick that rear end. Folks, let me know what you think in the comments. Y'all take care and God bless.